welcome to Cooking with Two Fat Cooks. Tonight we are going to make a squash casserole. It's a wonderful way to use squash because if you're growing squash, you have a boatload of it. I think National Leave Squash on Your Neighbor's Porch Day is coming up, but in the meantime, this is a great way to use it up. Everybody will eat it. It's a casserole, it's lovely, and it freezes beautifully. So if you have the squash coming in like gangbusters right now, make you a bunch of casseroles and chuck them in the freezer, and then later on this winter or this summer or fall you'll be very happy that you did because you can just pull them out and throw them in the oven. So we're going to get started. First thing Eric's going to do is wash these because these are lovely farm fresh squash, so they're still covered in sand. That's what they grow in.
I like the sand, but adds texture.
I don't think it's quite the texture people are looking for.
Yeah, they're whiners.
I don't think it's quite the texture I'm looking for.
Well, I mean, no offense, but it's right there.
Yeah. Here I am making the squash casserole. Frank wants to know he gets any squash casserole. Sorry, freaking help me.
And squash.
He'd probably eat squash with enough butter. I mean, it's squash.
I need a truck tire with enough butter on it. All right, let's shoot.
We watch the squash. Thank you, baby. All right, so we're going to slice the squash somewhat thick. Oh, and I should say this is 2 1/4 pounds of squash because we're going to have some loss when we take the ends off. And so we have a little bit more than we wanted. Oh, thank you. I'm going to need that for the eggs. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, I was going to use it for the drop.
So, I'm going to get my water started first. This is oh goodness, I don't know how large that pan is. How big is that pan?
6.
3-quart. This is a 3-quart pan.
Metric.
Metric. We're going to put it on high because we want to bring that water up to a boil, and I'm going to throw in a teaspoon of salt. Squash is very bland, and so you really got to make sure that you season it well to have some flavor going on. So we're going to throw in our teaspoon of salt there, and then we're going to slice our squash while that comes up. Pretty in it. I like to use young squash for this because they stay fairly well intact, but honestly it's a casserole. If you have some that hid under a leaf and they got away from you, this is the perfect place to hide them where no one's going to realize that you let the squash grow into a monster.
When it's not coming in, it's probably better use for slightly less than
ideal.
Yeah.
Definitely. We're just really lucky that we have such great squash from our farmers. Yeah.
What's that? Oh, it's just that root end coming through.
Interesting. Squashes always look like little birds to me.
That's disturbing and weird.
It might be, but nevertheless. Rain damage there.
Yeah. And we like to do ours where the squash tend to, again, hold up a little better when they go into the casserole. You can obviously slice them very nice. Thinner than this, some folks actually kind of, once they get past the thing, they mash them to make a casserole. If that's what you like, go for it. It won't really change the recipe very much. You'll need to experiment a little bit and see what works best for you, but it should be about the same amounts of stuff as long as you're starting with the initial weights and whatnot.
Yes. Always eat what you like. If you want it mashed up, mash it up. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Especially Eric. I mean, what does he know?
Just a given.
It's a lot of squash.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this one. That one's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a problem with ground vegetables.
Oh yeah.
They like to roll.
There's a number you add to carrots for the coins that wind up on the floor up under the fridge. If you have X amount of carrots in a recipe, you add a certain percentage based on how much will escape.
All right, so we are done with this. Get that out of the way. Would you throw me a towel, sweet pea?
10-4.
Thank you. Got water everywhere, and I still need my cutting board for my onion. Now, the onion we're just going to again do in slices. It's nothing fancy. You want to cut the slices in half? Would you prefer it that way?
I just break the rings off like you make an onion ring.
All right, that was my plan.
You can leave the onion out if you do not like onion. If you do not like big pieces of onion, you can coarse chop, fine chop, whatever you want to do with it.
It is a very classic, if you like onions, it's very classic to have them in there. But again, you don't have to. Pretty.
And this is just a yellow onion.
Chuck the root end.
Oh yeah.
And you can use whatever onion you like. The recipes that we've used over the years to develop this all call for yellow onion, and I strongly suspect it's because it's going in with yellow squash. So
Just what onions
it seems to me,
have,
yeah, that. So we're going to butter our casserole dish, and then we're going to have some butter for putting on top of the casserole at the end. Would you throw me a paring knife?
So are you going to split it between the two?
I am.
Cool.
So what I like to do is chop up my butter while it's still cold from the refrigerator because it cuts up better. And you end up with nice little pieces to dot all along the top. Otherwise you just end up with a couple of giant pieces in one spot. So do it while it's still cold and you get a little better chance of getting it sprinkled everywhere. I'm going to put that in the dish because I'm going to use that to butter the dish. And then I'll just put that aside.
And that was about 2 tablespoons?
That was 2 tablespoons, exactly. And we will again have the ingredients down in the description. That is the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I need somewhere to, oh.
You want to go around it? That way it didn't start out.
Melt. Thank you. All right, the water, I probably should stir that, getting a little warm. Stir my salt so it dissolves.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
If you were going to make one versus we're going to split this up so that we can freeze one. But if you were making just a single, you'd use like a 9x9, 9x13 casserole dish. And we're using loaf pans right now.
We're using loaf pans. You know, and I don't even know why. This is just what I've always used, is the loaf pans. I don't know what other people use for their squash casserole.
I'd say
I've always made it in a loaf pan. That's a really good question.
I think it's because we don't make a whole lot of it go.
Maybe.
Probably a 9x9. Dude, whatever will fit.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be deep. You could use the same one we use for the cobbler. Our cobbler one is 7x11.
Yeah. So,
You could definitely use that for that. Somebody is shedding hair into the food. I don't know who. I think it was Eric. Definitely Eric.
Yeah.
He's got
those
long flowing locks. That's right.
Yeah.
You know?
I know.
All right. So, got these all nice and buttered. I'm gonna wash my hands
Quitter.
because they're buttery. Probably good for your skin. Maybe butter your skin.
No,
No?
that's not a thing people do. No.
Yeah. You'd have cats following you everywhere.
I think that's pork chops, not butter.
I think if you had pork chops on your skin, you'd have everybody following you everywhere.
They would have cats.
All right. Well, while we wait on the water,
Don't put a lid on that.
I probably should. Make it come up a little faster. I'm going to grate the cheese. Now you can just buy grated cheese. If you're in a hurry, you had to work late, the kids aren't cooperating, the dog made a mess, you can just use grated cheese. It's perfectly fine. It does, however, have cellulose on it. That's what keeps it from turning just back into one big lump of cheese in the bag. And so it doesn't melt quite as well. It will do, but if you have a minute, get a block and put the kids or the husband or the dog to grating the cheese while you work on the rest of the casserole. It'll just melt a little bit nicer.
It's a much better use of your dollar if you have the space to store it and work it to buy chunk cheese and then break it up yourself as you need it.
Definitely.
One kitchen nerd thing, if you get a really good deal on a big piece of cheese or something like that, when you're handling the bulk of the cheese, wear a pair of disposable gloves.
Very smart advice, yes.
Cheese is one of the reasons cheese tends to go bad faster is because if it gets handled, it picks up stuff even if your hands are clean. So if you've got a really good deal on a 2-pound brick of really great cheese and you're doling it out when you're prepping it up, just wear a pair of gloves while you're working and it'll last a little bit longer when you have it in the fridge.
Yes, they did a really neat study on that, and they had people handle cheese, and the growth on the cheese was basically their little fingerprints all over the cheese. So you could definitely tell it was because people were touching the cheese. So
I mean, using it fast and getting it on, on the line and out, it's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you're, like I said, if you're handling a lot, especially if you got something nice because you had the extra, then yeah, wearing a pair of gloves will help it out.
Absolutely, that's a very good tip. We're also adding an ounce of Parmesan to this. You don't have to if you don't want to. If you have it in the house, it adds a nice little bit of
wang.
Yeah, a little wang, a little extra umami.
Yeah, it's squash, so it needs some help.
Little extra flavor, and it hurts. And it's funny because it is such a hard, dry cheese, but Parmesan melts beautifully. So it will also add to the creaminess of the casserole in the end. So we've got that. And while we are still waiting on the pan, man, your water just takes forever.
Yeah, it's weird how this happens every time. It's always my fault.
I'm gonna crush the crackers. I'm using a small sleeve of saltines. It's about 15 saltines. We buy the little packs because you should always have saltines in your house. They're awesome for everything, especially if you don't feel good. But we get the little packs so that we don't have a half a sleeve somewhere getting stale. Yeah. So these are the perfect size for the casserole. I'm just gonna use the end of my whisk because I'm already gonna dirty my whisk. If you have a big sleeve, you can put them in a Ziploc. You can also just put them in a bowl and kind of smash them. It's saltine, so it doesn't take a lot. I got a hole.
I don't want to say anything, but Ziploc bag. Ziploc, like I said earlier. Ziploc.
Yeah. They're already in a bag. I didn't want to use a piece of bag just to throw it away.
All over the thing. So if you were going to do that correctly and use a Ziploc bag, that's about 10.
15.
It's 15 crackers.
I counted them.
If you have the bigger sleeves, obviously, cracker crumbs are also something that you can always have.
This is true. You could just crush the whole sleeve and then put it up.
We'll get a weight of about what that is. So yeah, just if you have a box of saltines, open a big sleeve, dump it into a Ziploc, pound it up, pull out what you need for the recipe, and then fold it up and stick the rest of it in your freezer door somewhere. If you have something later on that needs a little crunch or something, cracker crumbs are cracker crumbs. They'll keep in the freezer forever.
Definitely. All right. I am simmery, and we're not like blanching or anything, so I'm not gonna let her come to a full boil. I'm gonna go ahead and chuck my veg in carefully so I don't splatter myself with simmery water. You can see the bubbles coming up. She was just at the right temperature.
This is very much you'll need to do this for you. the times that we'll use will depend on the thickness the squash is sliced, how tender you want it when it goes into the casserole.
The power of your stove.
Yeah, so it's just one of those where you're just going to need to basically just have you a fork, maybe a bigger pot, and just kind of let it roll.
The onions are just floaty.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put the lid back on.
Will you kick that down or leave
No,
it at temperature?
I'll leave it at temperature.
Okay.
We're just cooking them to get them a little tender to give them a head start.
Yeah.
So that once they're in the casserole, the baking time for the casserole is more about kind of making it cohesive and browning the crumb. So that's exactly what that's for. Oh, I forgot my milk.
Oh.
Luckily, I put all the ingredients down in the description.
Mm-hmm. You drink the milk, that's why it's on the recipe.
A little for you, a little for me. Who's the Cajun? The Cajun.
Justin something.
The Cajun, Raging Cajun?
No, I don't think he had a name like
A
that.
little for the dish, a little for me.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I could remember his name. Yeah, he used to do it with wine. He'd add a
Yes.
little wine to the dish and a little wine to his glass.
Which seems fair.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna have a half a cup of milk. And we're gonna add 2 eggs. These are farm fresh eggs, so you should always break into a small bowl before you put them into your main dish.
You really should do it with store-bought eggs just in case
You really
blow
should.
a shell open or something.
Yeah,
It's
you never
easier.
know. There's always, because you're gonna have all your ingredients in and you're gonna crack that last egg and it's gonna be bad and it's gonna waste all the ingredients you already have in the bowl. And if it was me, it's the last things I have in the house, so I don't have any more to start over.
Well, it's also easier to fish a shell out of the little bowl than it is to fish around in your big bowl.
For sure. So we're gonna mix up our eggs and milk. Now I'm gonna add my seasonings to this before we add the cheese because then it's easier to kind of homogenize the seasonings in it than once the cheese is in and is lumpy and makes it more difficult to stir. So we're going to add, well that was a trick, a half a teaspoon of kosher salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. You don't have to grind your own, we just have it for when Eric does get black pepper. He likes the fresh stuff. Tighten my grinder down a little bit.
Right.
It loosens as you use it.
Oh yeah, it's a grinder. The trade-off for being nice is that it's annoying.
Alright, so I've got my pretty 1/4 teaspoon of, oh, not quite yet. So much work. You're lucky you're cute.
I told you to use the box pepper, and
I don't even want to think about how old that container of pepper is in
it's
there.
black pepper. I'm sorry it makes everybody, including Christopher Kimball, mad. It does not matter.
Oh, we're gonna get letters about
That's
this
right,
one.
that's right, yeah.
Make sure you address all your angry letters to Eric.
Yeah, just go ahead and send them to
E-E-R, yeah, that's right.
Angie Lopez Alt, care of NPR.
Alright, so we're going to whisk up our seasoning. Look how pretty that is. And that's all I need to whisk for, so we're going to chuck that in the sink.
Nah, you said out loud, so. Step 3 that needs the whisk coming up any minute now.
Yeah, well, luckily we have more.
That's it.
Let's poke my squashes a little.
And the spices in this are something that obviously make it once. If it's a little too much, not enough, whatever, adjust it. You could probably add some fresh green spices and such, vary it up. Again, it's a squash casserole. It's a pretty bland palate to begin with, so you can make it.
Definitely customize it.
Yeah.
Make it once, and then as you're eating it, think to yourself, oh, I'd really like this with a little
This would
more.
be nice with some fresh dill.
Yeah, or some garlic, or a little less this, a little more that. Always, always do that. Customize. Every dish in the long run should end up being your recipe. We have a nice little cheese. Oh, I didn't save any out for the top.
Oh, I honestly honestly, like I said, I never do. I always just do it like that.
If you want to get fancy, you can save some cheese for the top, but I didn't. So
if you're going to do the cheese on the top, I would take some of it out of the cheddar and not the Parmesan.
definitely,
That's me.
definitely.
So,
And we're using saltines. We always have saltines in the house. If you are making this for company, use Ritz crackers or club crackers if you want to get fancy, a little extra oomph to them. But really, saltines are classic casserole.
please take that cutting board off the cooktop, please. And I think if we're going to split it up, maybe get a bigger kitchen bowl and mix it in the bowl and then move it to the casserole dishes.
No, you are crazy.
That's never going to pour and mix in.
You just wait.
All right, baby.
You just wait.
So, end of the video, we'll show how to clean a countertop when you've poured stuff all over it. You want a fork?
Actually, I want you to rinse this out and put it back in the sink. I was going to give it to you to drain over there. I will get a fork in the meantime. Not yet. You have to be patient.
I don't want to be patient.
All right. So that's it. We're waiting, waiting on that. If you were making dinner right now, you'd be poking at your meat or your other veg.
And this, again, we're making one for this evening, and we're making one to stick in the freezer. This is something that you could get to the point just prior to the breadcrumbs and stick in the refrigerator. So if you were in the kitchen in the morning because it's going to be real hot that evening, you don't want to spend too much time in the kitchen, you could put it together, let it cool to about room temperature, stick it in the fridge, take it out later in the day, put the breadcrumbs on the top, and throw it in the oven.
Yes.
It might affect your cooking time a little bit, but not a great deal either way.
It's a great way to have a nice, easy meal when you don't have a lot of time at the end of the day. That is the truth.
And this is a pretty blank canvas recipe. I mean, obviously it's a squash, so any type of squash would work.
You could definitely do zucchini.
Yeah, there's other vegetables that would probably work. It's going to be a question of getting the stage we're working on now, getting them cooked to where, one, they'll finish cooking, you have them in the casserole, and two, where you want them. So if you want it to be a little more firm when you're finished, you can cook it a little less, but you could do this with all sorts of things. It's a pretty open-ended sort of thing once you get the basic stuff down.
Absolutely. And let me stir this so I can show. So you can see these ones here on the top. You're starting to lose some of your seed definition, and they're getting a little more
Swanky.
opaque, I
Yeah,
guess is the
sure, yeah.
word. And there we are. See, your green seeds are going clear. So that one needs to go down to the bottom because it's not cooked enough yet. And that one there.
Yeah, like I say, that's generally just kind of fork tender.
Exactly.
When they start to break up, if you stick a fork, especially like one of the smaller pieces, and it kind of breaks apart on you,
Then you're
that's
definitely
enough.
I think just a couple more minutes and we'll be good to go. Do you want an up glove for to drain them for me?
Oh yeah, that'd be great. I'm gonna use the colander, but I understand.
No, you should drain it through your fingers.
That's it. Just
That
use
is exactly what I was thinking.
I prefer using a catcher's mitt. Just, you know.
I'm not sure you should be the one teaching people how to cook now that I stop and think about it.
Liner.
Wow, that gives another minute. I'm going to get a cookie sheet. Oh, I have one right here. No, we're only cooking one of them. We're freezing one of them. So counterintuitively, even though Eric just said that if you put it in the refrigerator, not to put the crumbs on top, the one that we're putting in the freezer, we are putting the crumbs on top. Because it's going to come out of the freezer and it's going to go in the oven. and there's not going to be any pass and go or collecting $200, and so it needs to be ready to pop in.
Oh yeah. Well, too, hopefully, if your freezer's not badly overloaded with something like this size, it should freeze fairly quickly.
And the crumbs
so it's not
won't
going
get
to give the crumb
soggy.
time to soak in.
Exactly.
If you have it in the fridge for 6 or so hours, yeah, you're going to have crumb soup on top, and that's
I
going to
think
be
that
weird.
would be really gross. Be like paste. Crumb paste.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, and I am not throwing stones at any state. I mean, this is my family. Yeah, it's a recipe with mashed up crackers on top. It's really not, I don't think it's going to affect it too much.
Anything with crackers on top is fabulous. What are you talking about?
I'm saying if they get a little soft, you're not going to be like, oh no, this is substandard.
We got
That's good,
nice pokey. All right, so I'm going to turn the burner off, swing the handle around to the man. He's going to drain it for me.
Oh, that smells good.
And then,
Now, if you were going to make stewed squash, you would just keep cooking this, probably at a slightly lower temperature until the squash gets to where you want it, and the onions are done where you want them. Add seasonings as you like, and ta-da! You just made stewed squash.
yeah. Possibly even.
You want this back with
yeah, just put it right here. Put it on top of the.
Sit it back where it was. I can read it.
Can you reach? Ooh, look at me! I got Mr. Long Arms. I have long arms. I'm a fancy man.
And so.
Not all of us have super long arms. Alright. Cheese. Alright. There we go. We can probably see that.
The tongs?
The tongs.
Oh.
They're hot. I'm just going to stick my hands in there.
I'm not saying weak or nothing.
I think you are.
I am, totally. I am super Saiyan weak. Bruising them.
Am I bruising them?
The humanity.
You poor thing.
I feel bad.
Put that one aside. Alright, and these are obviously slightly smaller. It's just the two of us here. And like Eric was saying, if you've got a bigger family, get the big pan and just cook the whole thing in one big pan.
And I don't know exactly how far I would say this, but the recipe should be fairly scalable.
Very.
So you can make a great big batch if you've got you a lasagna pan sitting around somewhere. Again, good. Go with something fairly inexpensive to make run.
It's a lovely side dish. Although I guess if you were like vegetarian, you could use this as a main dish.
Probably need to figure out.
It's got some nice protein.
Yeah, I guess vegetarian.
Yeah, it's a vegetarian, not vegan.
It's like that's gonna be.
Our pickles are vegan.
What?
You know, it's a good start.
That doesn't have anything to do with the butter and the cheese in this recipe.
It does, so it's vegetarian.
Are you switching it out with pickles to make it vegan? Is that what's going on? Because
Pickle casserole. I don't know about that.
I'm not the one rambling.
All right, so let me show you how it's done. You mix it up so it's nice and
Mixed.
I was aiming for like homogeneous, maybe.
Mixed.
All right.
Mixed for Latin. Latin mixed.
And you just take half of it, and voila. See how easy that was?
One could also, in a universe where we don't do things this way, have a larger bowl and just put the two in it, mix the whole thing together, and then separate it out if you're going to separate it, or dump it in your bowl if you're going to
Yeah,
dump it in your
but
bowl.
then you would have to remember to save the cheese for the top. And now I've got cheese on the top already. See, look at that.
It's a device. A labor-saving device.
It was my plan the whole time. You don't know.
I don't know.
That's exactly right. You just keep telling yourself that.
And so.
Alright, so we've got some lovely, and it doesn't have to be all that. I just really like patting things. It's gonna melt and kind of bubble itself out.
You are so lucky as the viewer, there's not an offset spatula involved in this at least once or twice already. We have so
I do love an
many
offset.
offset spatulas for no good reason.
Because they're awesome. I have, you know, I like tactile things. I'm a very tactile person. Right?
Nothing's just homemade like something that's level to the standards of the people at Giza.
I'm very tactile.
Funny, I think when they diagnose that, they use a different word.
You know, no shaming here.
I ain't said that.
We're all crazy here. We're all just different crazies. There's nothing wrong with a little crazy. Keeps life from getting boring. Try to keep most of the casserole in the dish. Professional hint, you're
That's
welcome.
right, yeah.
You
Lucky
subscribe for more professional hints like that. In case you didn't already know that. All right. Look at those beautiful casseroles. So now we have, in this span of time this took, we have a lovely side dish for tonight, and we have one for the freezer for a night when we just cannot be bothered to care. This will save you from having to order pizza. Chuck that in the oven.
And feel free to heat it back up and eat it with the pizza. I mean, knock yourself out.
Yeah, all right. No shaming.
I
I like to scatter my butter about.
we don't have lids for those, do we?
We do not. This will
Okay.
have to get aluminum
So
foil.
we'll wrap that. Plastic and aluminum or just aluminum?
Just aluminum.
Okay.
Because then you can literally pull it out of the freezer. You'll leave the aluminum foil on it.
Start it.
You put it on a sheet pan and you put it in a cold oven. You turn your oven on to the temperature, and that keeps the thermal shock from breaking your frozen casserole dish. You're welcome.
You and that thermal shock thing are getting a lot.
Thermal
of
shock
traction.
is a real thing. Do not
Uh-huh.
listen to him on this,
Uh-huh.
people.
Uh-huh.
Thermal shock is real, and it's messy, and it will scare the daylights out of you when it happens. It's happened to me, and it is scary, and it's messy because you have to clean it up, and I don't like having to clean things up. I'm actually going to let this cool before I aluminum foil it, but I would and put it in the freezer, but I'm going to let this finish cooling because the squash are hot before I put the lid on and put it in the freezer.
Well, we'd hopefully wrap it better than throwing that piece of aluminum foil on the top anyway.
This is true.
So.
But this one's going in the oven, which has been preheating. I do believe I forgot to say. I'll have to put a little note on the bottom of the beginning of the, the
Always,
video.
as soon as you hit play, preheat the oven to 350, get out 2 bowls that we don't going to talk about, and salt or
Yes. So
peppers. Yeah.
I'm going to throw this in the oven. We're going to, we'll take a quick beauty shot when we turn it around, and then we will, we'll come back and show you the finished product. Again, this is baking for 45 minutes. We're not going to make you sit here and listen to us just chat and stare at an empty counter for 45 minutes. So we'll have what it looks like halfway through and what it looks like when it's finished. Eric will scoop you out a nice scoop to show you.
Will that have any type of cover on it when it goes in the oven?
No,
So it
because
goes
you
in
want a
like that.
lovely golden
Yeah.
brown on your
I thought so. I
crackers.
just want to make sure.
All right, we'll see you in half of 45 minutes.
Good. Math is good.
Oops.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
All right, so you can see a little bubbling and a goldenness. It has a little bit more to go, so we're going to put her back in now that we've rotated it. Okay, so the casserole has come out of the oven, and you can see some bubbling around the edges and some browning of the cheese and the crackers around the edges. And we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes or so to kind of firm up before we serve it. And then we're going to dig in. I hope you'll give this a try. Head on out to your nearest farmer's market, get you a big pile of squash, and let us know what you think. Enjoy!